Hello, everyone. And I appreciate the opportunity to speak with you about a creative approach that my organization, Adventure Partners, has been managing on 45 different universities this current semester, and it's a second-year program. And these 45 universities are located in the United States, Canada, Europe, North Africa, the Middle East, Asia, and Australia. And peer-to-peer, Ken, if you wanted to fire it up, peer-to-peer challenging extremism, and I'm going to be using the word either P2P or just peer-to-peer as the name of an initiative, which is a public-private sector partnership between the White House National Security Council, the Department of Defense, the National Counterterrorism Center, the U.S. Department of Homeland Security, and the U.S. Department of State. They actually all talk to each other in this program. And we're happy to announce that recently we just signed on Facebook as our first technology partner, knowing that a lot of people are asking Facebook, what are you doing to counter violent extremism? So let me give you a little bit of the backstory how this whole initiative happened. Literally about a year ago today, I received a phone call from George Salim. George is the Director of Community Partnerships at the White House National Security Council. He was in Los Angeles with the NCTC, DoD, and State Department for a 3-day symposium. They were meeting with the producers, directors of Argo, and a number of entertainment and Hollywood media types, with the premise being, what can American media do to help challenge extremism? The epiphany and the learning from that particular symposium was this: we have lost the social media war against ISIL, period, end of report. George called me up, being familiar with Adventure Partners, and said, I've introduced your business model, your academic partnership model, to the head of the NCTC he would like to meet. Within 3 days, I was in Washington, and within a couple of short weeks, we had a contract to develop the peer-to-peer challenging extremism program as a pilot on 23 universities. This initiative was designed to halt the digital momentum and prevent ISIL and other extremist groups own the online space. And we do so using a model where we have students, digital natives, create campaigns that are credible, appropriate, and believable to their audiences. Who better to develop the counter-narrative than the very same group ISIL and other extremists are trying to recruit, the digital natives? It's not me, it's not you. As Stan said, it's the younger generation. It's a successor generation. The academic partnership model I'm going to share with you is very flexible and malleable. It's been used by the FBI, Homeland Security, the Navy SEALs, in the US and Canada for recruitment and branding purposes, and the private sector, Fortune 500s, NGOs, trade associations will use it for marketing communications, public policy, as well as social impact problems that they have when they're looking for truly creative solutions. And in order for the academic partnership model to work, to actually make it happen, I need to get approvals from university presidents, deans, and faculty who will welcome peer-to-peer challenging extremism into their classrooms and into their communities. And I'm happy to report that higher education is absolutely excited and willing to stand shoulder to shoulder with the US government right now in addressing transnational security issues like extremism. So what I'm going to do now is share our approach. Agreeing that university students, digital natives born between the early 1980s and 2000s, have a better idea of concepts of technology and viral social media, we challenge students while they're in an actual class for credit to develop a counter-narrative to extremism. The first thing they do is market research. They will identify either one of 4 target audiences: the at-risk, the silent majority, or the uncommitted population, with the latter being, according to CVE research, has a higher propensity to radicalize based upon the fact that they're going through the identity searching phase. The 4th group are civic-minded university students, those that will galvanize over important social impact issues. And as you'll see, Missouri State, which happens to be the #1 team from last year's international competition present their campaign 195. That's a movement-building campaign globally, and you'll be amazed to see how many countries they reached with their initiative. This approach strikes a fine balance between structure and creativity. With structure, the academic partnership model that we've been managing, we've done over 2,000 times on 800 campuses over the last 25 years. It's a process-driven curriculum, which means that the faculty who teaches either a marketing, advertising, social media, international relations, public policy, conflict or terrorism studies class will embed the peer-to-peer challenging extremism program into their syllabi. Here's an example of the syllabus from New York University. And let me just read the course title. Conflict Resolution. It's a master's level program, and the peer-to-peer challenging extremism program represents 40% of the grade. There are 17 students in this graduate level course, 16 different countries represented. Who would you like to have on your team to challenge extremism? These guys right here. The best part is the creativity. It is incredibly exciting to give students the opportunity to develop a campaign that they think is most appropriate to challenge extremism in their countries and their communities. Ones that they believe are credible, authentic to the audiences that they know so intimately. So that structure and creativity is part of the DNA of this model. Put simply, it's the power of peer-to-peer. So here is what students do. You're saying, sounds interesting, Tony, tell me what happens. So around the world, and if you remember in college, the average college class size is between 10 and 40 students. For the peer-to-peer project, the sweet spot is going to be between 15 and 30 students. They form themselves as a real social media agency. There's an account director, then there's a research department, advertising, public relations, strategy, budget, technology, video production, coding, if they want to develop a mobile app. Everything that happens in this class happens in real life. What a taste of the real world by having a real client who has real problems, and as you see, we give them real money to implement. Then they log into Basecamp. Basecamp is a third-party platform that we use, and it allows the faculty and students to register. Two things happen. Number one, they get to read the safety protocols. We're talking about a sensitive topic here, right? University presidents, deans, provosts, trustees, you want my students to develop a campaign to challenge extremism? We have to honor the safety protocols that were given to us by the National Counterterrorism Center, as well as the Center for Strategic Counter Communications of the State Department. That's a must read. The other thing they do is read the cookbook. This is the blueprints. This is what we call the project brief. And it was written by Dr. Quinton Wiktorowicz, former White House Director of the National Security Council. It's excellent. It's the how-to, and it also has the 8 metrics of success. Since this is an international competition, they read this. On the Basecamp page, once everybody registers, they have access to over 1,000 pages of NCTC research data. So they have a really good understanding of the CVE environment. Now, after they do and read the research and the project brief, the fun begins. They start brainstorming. They do primary research because research guides good program development and strategy design. They may have great intuition for their neighborhoods and their communities and their countries. We need research. That is just good marketing 101. No more than 5 weeks into the semester, and again, because they are now a social media agency for the US Department of State, they will put together a creative brief, 2 or 3 pages, pretty simple. So here at Georgia State, this is what we plan to do. So the first page is a narrative. So we get a pretty good idea that they're on track and they're addressing the objectives of the program. On the second and third pages, if they like, here's what our YouTube video is going to look like. Here's the functionality of our mobile app. Or we're going to develop a hashtag campaign, and this is the messaging element. We do this as a quality control. And I'll share with you in a few moments, the government, to their credit, has said anything goes. which is unusual for the United States government to do that. But when it comes to a topic like CVE and extremism, ISIL has complete latitude with what they say. And in order for this program to have street credibility, the government let go. To their credit. Amazing. Once we approve the creative brief, we give students $2,000. And once you give students money to implement a campaign, it changes the dynamics of learning. They make it happen. So for the remaining part of the semester, they are standing up their campaign. This is much, much more than a thinking exercise. This is a doing exercise. And in the world of education, in academia, it's called contextual education or experiential education. So when I'm contacting faculty and deans and presidents in other countries of the world, this is a pretty new model. And the US has been the birthplace of it, and it's an opportunity for students to get real hands-on experience with a real client. On December 11th, every university will be submitting no more than a 40-page PowerPoint. And I'm going to be talking about this campaign from Australia. It was the #2 place in our spring pilot. This is their bookend report of everything they did. We then use this for first-round judging. Again, it's an international competition. Once we go through all the submissions, we sit down with the interagency partners, the White House, State Department, Homeland Security, NCT, DOD, and other NGOs, and we go through and discuss the merits and the strengths of each of the campaigns. Ultimately, that leads to having 6 university teams come to Washington, D.C., all expenses paid, from around the world, and compete in a face-off competition. It's incredible, as you can imagine. And with that, there is scholarship money, $5,000, $3,000, and $1,000. And then the State Department has all the international students participate in an International Visitors Leadership Program, IVLP, which is a 10-day tour of the United States. Unbelievable. So as you can imagine, the response from educators and students around the world to participate in this has been fantastic. So here are the objectives. Everything that we do has to be objective-driven because faculty and students are saying, what do you want me to do? It's really simple. And the simplicity allows for broad interpretations for every country, community, or campus. And that is to develop a social or digital media initiative, product, or a tool. The DNA of this program is to give 45 universities the absolute same objectives and let them figure out what's best for their country. Who knows better? Now, this year, we received what we call 12 drivers and preventers from the State Department. And they believe these drivers and preventers can help abate extremism. And what's interesting is these topics are relevant to virtually every single country here because, as Secretary Kerry said, there isn't a conflict-free zone on a world map today. So we allow students now to expand the objectives to include these particular drivers, and it's also in the media with refugee issues and border security here in the United States, underserved communities, which all of us have to deal with. So we're excited to expand the objectives a bit because it allows some of the universities to narrow focus. As an example, our faculty member in Switzerland happens to be the UNESCO chair for tourism at cultural heritage sites around the world. So you know his graduate level students are going to be doing a program about Palmyra, which is perfect and very timely. So here are the locations. In our spring pilot, we implemented peer-to-peer on 23 universities. This semester, we have 45 universities in 18 countries. And out of that, 25 are domestic and 20 are international. In speaking with our agency partners, we are pretty confident that this is the largest organized surge against ISIL that the world is currently doing. During the past pilot of 23 schools, we had 600 universities developing campaigns against extremism. We believe this semester we have about 1,000 students around the world that are creating a social media tsunami. I mean, that's what it is. It's a social media tsunami against ISIL. And it's credible, and it's authentic, and it works because they're the ones who are doing it. An interesting point, from last year's pilot, we have 6 universities that have actually adopted the campaigns that the students created and is now their legacy CVE program. And that was one of the objectives. We don't want these campaigns to go around. We need 1,000 flickers of light and candles lit against extremism all the time, because ISIL keeps popping up everywhere. So this campaign has really been effective as a pilot, and now into its 2nd year, as a program that mobilizes youth to do something. Again, who do you want on your team? We want young people to own and prevent extremism in their communities and their countries. So here are our domestic partners, and we are absolutely delighted with the roster. And there are a variety of approaches that we use in building this roster. The first is we receive a list of US universities from the Department of State, Homeland Security, and these relationships they have with the US government is mostly around CVE research. Another way that we develop our roster is based upon faculty and universities that have participated in an EdVenture Partners program over the last 25 years. Good example being Missouri State University, which has won about 8 awards with various clients of ours. So we're able to cherry pick and invite the best of the best. Out of this roster, you might see that there's pretty good representation in Los Angeles, and that is because LA is one of the US Department of Homeland Security's CVE pilot cities, along with Boston and Minneapolis, and Deputy Chief Mike Downing has made a commitment to bring this to the LA area. We're also testing LA for the first time as a market with 2 community colleges. So that's the first time we've done this, with the hope being that it's successful, and then we have 2 community colleges in Minneapolis with very, very large Somali populations who will be participating in our next spiral. For many of you here in the audience, here's our list of university partners. And again, absolutely delighted with the quality and the caliber and the locations of all these universities. And we built this roster a couple of ways. First, we received a list of high priority countries from both the White House National Security Staff and the US Department of State. From there, we attempt to identify universities and faculty that teach an appropriate course where peer-to-peer is a good fit. And we do that a couple of ways. First is conferences and events such as this. I've been fortunate to meet many, many people who have said, I'd like to have my country participate. It can be that simple. Second, through networks and referrals. We have found ambassadors to be incredibly interested in peer-to-peer and want their programs. I was briefing Ambassador Bilal of Morocco, and during my meeting, he literally stopped, picked up the phone, called the president of Al Akhwain University in Irfan, and confirmed a school, just like that. So the referral network is really, really important. A close friend of ours is the global director of the Google Online Marketing Challenge. That's in 120 countries. He knows and has made recommendations of the absolute best social and digital media faculty in the world. You will be hearing from Ali Rasool from the University of Applied Sciences in Ravensburg, Germany, one of our schools. His faculty was a direct referral from Dr. Jamie Murphy in Perth, Australia. And last, we also use cultural and public affairs officers out of the embassies located in these high priority countries. And they've been able to make recommendations on specific universities where they might have a relationship, as well as faculty who have a penchant for experiential contextual learning, because you've got to have the right faculty member. So I thought you'd find this interesting as a segue to the last comment. So this is the broad swath of the various courses and titles that are currently doing the peer-to-peer program. And what we learned from the pilot, while you may think international relations, conflict studies, extremism studies students have the best knowledge about the issue, they do. But what we've also learned is they lack some of the creativity that we're asking them to do with videos, initiatives, and coding for mobile apps. So when I approach faculty now around the world, I encourage, I can't mandate, but I say what we've learned, the best programs have an interdisciplinary approach. If you can get marketing, communications, public relations, research, video, coding, computer science, students in your class, you have a chance for the podium. Your program is going to be better. So an interdisciplinary approach is great, but that is very exciting to see for one reason. You give these students in all these classes the same objective. Look at the diversity, that their optics and their course study is going to ultimately deliver in a final product. This is not cookie cutter. I assure you, what's happening in the school in Jordan and the other school in Jordan, same objectives, entirely different campaign. So now I'm going to review some specific campaigns that students developed, either an initiative, product, or a tool. And I have to be honest, it's really hard to decide which ones to show. This is from last year. We had 23 campaigns. They're all incredible. They're all different. But here are some, and I'm scratching the surface. So with that caveat, let's start in Serbia. Interesting. So we were too late in getting to the University of Belgrade. Faculty said, oh, this is great, but you should have called me 2 months earlier. So the State Department said, we work with an NGO, all University of Belgrade students, called Youth Education Committee, and we recommend you work with them. They were fantastic, 17 students. The name of their campaign is #Understand, and the objective in messaging has to do with recruitment prevention. Now, as so much recruiting is done through videos, they decided to use the same tool to fight back against ISIL. Another interesting point about Serbia, when talking to the students, they said, yeah, we have problems with ISIL, but we also have hate speech problems with extreme orthodoxy. And that's reflected in this powerful video. I hope. Let's try that again. Ken, if I just click, I should be good, right? Okay, bear with me a moment here. Okay, pretty incredible. Real props, by the way, real guns. They also, on their website, had an excellent recruitment prevention resource library that they put together and used across their social media platforms. Look at this creative. Brilliant. Used in all of its social media campaigns. One of the cornerstones of the #Understand campaign was each one of the 17 students made a commitment to go into middle schools, high schools, and colleges within the Balkans. and give a presentation by showing the video and talking about recruitment prevention. They did pre- and post-campaign research to determine the efficacy of their campaign, and they absolutely moved the meter in awareness of extremism and also how extremists recruit. One particularly engaging and important event was they held a Train the Trainer workshop for workers and volunteers involved in youth education. And they had attendance from 16 countries in both Europe and the Caucasus. And one story that came back to us is one young woman said, you know what, now I have the tools and the knowledge to actually talk to an extremist sympathizer of mine. So it's the peer-to-peer magic, young people talking to young people. So next here we have Nanyang Technological University in Singapore, and it was graduate level global security management class that developed Tabshir, which means in Arabic to give or spread good news. And the concept of Tabshir was to introduce Islam to the world and the world to Islam through a Chrome browser extension. So the students' internet research in Southeast Asia revealed that social media and web browsing were the main reasons for using the internet. So this group came up with a pretty simple solution. Every time somebody is surfing the web and makes a click to a new browser, messages of hope, positivity, empowerment, which we know are absolutely, according to CVE, as valuable and effective as being against countering extremist messages. And we saw that in our pilot, where out of 23 universities, 14 did not take a direct affront against ISIL. Some did. The majority said, we are going to go with a positive messaging strategy. That's great data to know about the millennial audience. Okay, completely different. So we had graduate students at Texas A&M Bush School, and they decided to do something called the Funny Militant, where extremism goes to die of laughter. This campaign is based on humor, irreverence, and parody, and if you take a deep dive into their website, you will be offended. That's the point. Their campaign was designed to show how twisted the ISIL ideology is with humor. And the students had great data and research that they did to determine how effective this particular campaign is. Now take comfort knowing that the students at Texas A&M did go to the Muslim Student Association and say, hey, listen, we're going to be doing this campaign. How offended are you? I mean, pretty smart. And the students said, wow, this is kind of out there, but you know what, given what you're trying to do, you have our support. So that was good. And then second, one of the things that's unique about this site is not only is a lot of the content student developed, but they used it as a repository so the students would take the best of CVE humor around the world. And it's not a humorous topic, we know that, but it's effective. So here are 3 examples of what you'll find on funnymilitant.com. So the first one leverages strength of humor. Who's your Baghdadi? And they photoshopped a severed head onto an actual image of an ad that ISIL is using to recruit extremist brides. To discredit and delegitimize, dude, like what happened last night. And tragically, the young man in the middle is Jake Bellardi, an Australian who carried out an Islamic State suicide attack. And then finally, when you need to overcompensate, we have because nothing says we are right like a big gun. Now, remember, no matter what you think of this, isn't the case. Doesn't matter. You're not the target audience for this. This resonates and this works with youth. And this is the outlier. This is probably the most aggressive that millennials have developed. And I want to go back to the comment about the United States government. This is exactly the kind of latitude and the parameters that I honor the government by saying, you know what, we can't sanitize our messaging anymore. We can't meddle with making approvals. We need to let what the audience thinks is the best way to attack ISIL. And this is, and I share this with you because this is about as aggressive as it got. And it is funny when you take a look at the other elements that they have on the website. Here's a campaign that came out of Calgary at Mount Royal University called the Want Movement, meaning we are not them. And I want to share a quick story. So I received a phone call from the White House in late September of last year. By 1st of October, I was calling our faculty around the world and asking them if they would like to participate. By week 3 or 4, I wonder what's happening with Mount Royal University. I talked to our faculty. She said, you know, I had to bump it up to the president. I haven't heard anything. You have to be patient. Then October 22nd happened. And that was a terrorist attack on Parliament Hill. The next day, she called me and said, we're in. I said, what happened? She said, well, the terror attack yesterday, the president called my office this morning and said, you know what? Let's do peer-to-peer challenging extremism because it is one thing that we can do to prevent domestic radicalization. This team got 3rd place in the competition. And it is one of those exceptional IMC campaigns, which means integrated marketing communications campaigns, where they used a number of different tactics to educate about extremism and recruitment prevention. I also believe it is one of the most innovative campaigns in how effective it was in demystifying and myth-busting Islam and Muslim culture. And I'll show you that. Even Zach Abraham, who is the author, I Was the Son of a Terrorist, Why I Chose Peace, and has 2.6 million views on TED, liked the Want Movement. So here is one of the social tactics that I really like. It was the Want Movement Project Brief. And this project was implemented to humanize and create dialogue between Muslims and non-Muslims, to highlight the diversity of Calgary culture, and also to allow all voices to be recognized and heard. So each black and white photo that you see on these tables had a 60-second sound clip attached to it, addressing the misconceptions of Islam and Muslim, and highlighted the ideas of inclusion, belonging, and tolerance. Effective, simple, easy, and students loved it. This was incredible because they tackled the idea that terrorism is considered a part of or a consequence of the Islamic faith and Muslim culture, and addressed the myth with the development of 5 different myth-busting posters. The research that the students did was pretty remarkable to develop these 5 different campaigns. First, they did in-person interviews with Muslims to identify what the counter-narrative content should be. The second, they interviewed 50 students to find out what 5 myths needed to be debunked. And third, they did research by contacting Canadian newspapers, and they went through 84 letters to the editor to find out what themes on terrorism, Islam, and Muslim were being talked about and written about in Canada. Great homework, which then led to the development of these 5 different posters. These posters were located and set up on both entrances to Mount Royal University for students, faculty, and staff. And the students' data indicated that people stopped to take a look, review, and read between 3 and 5 minutes each. Very, very impressive. This campaign was brilliant, and it validates the power of a mobile device as a tool to change the narrative of extremism. It's an interactive text-based experience, and to be perfectly honest, I can't do it justice by explaining it, so I'm going to read what the students wrote if you were to engage with this particular social media. Their words: "Dear friend, you're invited to interact with a variety of different installations and exhibits around Calgary depicting accurate and credible aspects of Islamic faith and Muslim culture. You'll be sent location-based clues directing you to various installations where you have a range of interactive experiences with these exhibits. Via text message, share what you saw and text back your thoughts and experiences about Islamic faith and Muslim culture. Once you're done, a representation of your individual path will be displayed in the form of a digital version of a historic Islamic tapestry from Turkey." Who comes up with this? When I saw this, it's like, my mind doesn't go there. But how effective, how simple. And the students said they got the absolute best qualitative research from this particular tactic because it's insightful. It's asking people questions, what they think, believe, perceive, understand about Islamic faith and Muslim culture. Again, from a mobile device. So in my last demonstration of a campaign, we are now in Australia. And I'm sure you're familiar with this campaign. This comes out of Curtin University in Perth. And it was a social media class comprised of 15 students, including a couple of young Somali men who are absolutely instrumental to 52 Juma, which means 52 Fridays. And if you're curious to know why a frog, because in Islam, a frog's croak is said to be praise of Allah. And this team had the good fortune to be under the tutelage of Dr. Ann Alley, a very highly well-known, respected practitioner in CVE and the director of the People Against Violent Extremism program and the Conflict Studies program at Curtin University. They created this app, and it's the first ever to address vulnerable young Muslims toward having a better sense of community and identity, which we know are really important issues in preventing radicalization. It's also adaptable to other cultures and religions. So here I'm going to play you the video they prepared.
52 Juma is a world-first initiative to guide young, vulnerable Muslims towards a positive view of themselves and their place in the community. 52 Juma is an interactive app to enhance personal identity, social interaction, and positive community spirit among Muslims 15 to 18 years old. After the free download, users create a profile selecting their own goals for personal and spiritual growth. 52 Juma presents them with weekly multi-level challenges on Friday, the day of prayers. Challenges range in difficulty from, say, making your mum a cup of tea, helping a stranger with their problem, or giving food to a homeless person. Additionally, the users are sent a daily affirmation, such as a quote from the Quran and Islamic poetry or prose. Users can connect with each other through the app to share challenges, compete for points, and support one another in their personal development. The app has its own social media function, with links to platforms such as Facebook and Twitter. The key to the success of 52 Juma is its intrinsic capacity as a digital social network, providing a very subliminal, non-coercive, yet effective socialization mechanism. This initiative engages tech-savvy young Muslims in the searching phase of their identity development. It will empower users to develop positive worldviews and actively contribute to individual and community resilience to myths of violent extremism. 52 Juma. Make the pledge, take the challenge, be the change.
Now, this is exciting. There were two objectives when we created the peer-to-peer challenge in extremism that the government wanted. Number one, we want young people to stand up these campaigns. We want them to do something because the online and social media environment, which primarily has focused on threats, in 1 year now focuses on solutions. That's important. The other key piece is this. You have seen some pretty innovative ideas, just a handful, mind you. So the government said, why don't we use peer-to-peer as an incubator, like a Silicon Valley startup of some of the best CV ideas around the world. There is no reason why 52 Juma needs to collect dust and not be operationalized. So what we have done is we are going to private sector and NGOs and foundations with almost like a fall lookbook. Here is the fall fashions that came out of the fall semester of peer-to-peer. Here are the spring fashions that came out of the spring peer-to-peer. Would you, sir, would you, ma'am, like to spend $30,000 to fund 52 Juma? So we are now operationalizing the best ideas, bringing them to market, scaling them up, getting them out. We're doing that with 195, as you will hear, and a couple of other initiatives. So we've got a wonderful byproduct and asset that continues to give. One of the things about peer-to-peer is the students and the faculty release the IP, the intellectual property, to the US government. So we are in that situation now of trying to identify the best of the best ideas that we can bring to life to counter violent extremism. The media, surprisingly, has loved what the students are doing to counter the narrative of extremism. Press, electronic have been entirely supportive, and fortunately, there has not been the usual tension that media likes to put into its stories. We've received over 55 local, regional, national, and international stories. Dr. Jessica Stern, American policy consultant teaching at Harvard University, noted terrorism author who just wrote ISIL, The State of Terror, has championed the peer-to-peer challenging extremism model and featured the program in Time, Newsweek, and the Harvard Gazette. One of the students at Arizona State contacted Dina Temple-Reston, who many of you know is a terrorism correspondent for National Public Radio. Dina did 2 stories, actually attended the June 4th presentations at the State Department, did a 6-minute segment on National Public Radio. Foreign Policy did an excellent, in-depth piece on peer-to-peer, and Yahoo News did the same with an embedded link to a State Department video that they produced to promote peer-to-peer. So I want to end with a very brief story, and it's appropriate that Dr. Ann Alley, on the right-hand side in the red from Lateline from Australia, has to do with Abdi and Ahmed, her 2 Somali students. These 2 young men, peer-to-peer was life-transforming. They were absolutely on the path to destruction. They confided in Ann that they were at risk. Abdi's brother was killed in gang violence in Perth, and Ahmed's friend went to Syria and got killed. They were absolutely going down the wrong path. They heard about the program, they participated and created. They were the brains behind 52 Juma. They are now heroes within the Somali Perth community. Their parents have talked to Ann and said, "This thing has changed my kids' lives." They even had friends who were not students at Perth University help with 52 Juma to get the Somali population to use it, to test it, to beta it. It has absolutely been life-changing. They changed their majors. They are now on the path to become CVE practitioners. Very powerful ability to change people's lives. When I had my first meeting with the National Counterterrorism Center, and we were talking about the metrics of success for this program, and we have some, they're mostly Facebook likes and press and things that you can imagine within a social media environment, some of the typical metrics. Colonel Matt Venhouse of the NTC said, "Tony, I think the greatest measure of success is going to be if we can prevent one young man from strapping on a suicide vest and prevent blowing up some people. That's a success." Well, in thinking about the story of Ahmed and Abdi, their past, and how this program has been so transformational, I think we just might have done that. Thank you very much, and I'd love to answer your questions.